All right, folks, the From the Flight Deck podcast presented by Dial-A-Pilot. It's Kyle and Joey here again. And Joey, I just went to China for the first time. That was,
Oh, wow.
dude, it was way different than I was expecting. Yeah, we went to Shanghai, and it was really cool. Actually, I was pretty thrilled. Have you done Shanghai, or have you done much of China?
Yeah, I used to do a bunch with Atlas, but it was during COVID. So essentially, we would fly in. We would usually station in Incheon, South Korea, and then we would fly over to China, do the 3 hour sort, which is just where they take stuff off and then put stuff back on, and then we would usually fly to Anchorage from there. So it turned into long days, but we never overnighted. So I'm very jealous.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, man, flying into there during COVID with all the cargo stuff that you guys were doing must have been a unique experience. Um, yeah, it was pretty cool. So we flew in. I was the international relief officer on this one, so I was sitting in the back seats. I was not the pilot flying, but it was super cool flying in there. So we had the first break. We've talked a lot about breaks on this, but it was like, I think it was like 12 hours and 40 minutes going over. So I had like 5.5 hours in the bunk, got some good sleep, and then woke up. And the other IRO and I flew the rest of the way until the captain and the flying first officer came back, and they took over and took us into Shanghai. So I kind of got to look out the window a lot and see what was going on. And man, it was a beautiful city, unbelievably clean. It was pretty
Mm,
cool. Um, the airport was full of just massive airplanes, dude. A380s, 787s, 777s. I didn't see anything small, really. Just so
mm.
much international operation stuff going on in there. But then we took the van and we stayed downtown, and we stayed at the JW Marriott, which was one of the nicest properties I've ever been to. It was
Yeah.
like stunningly gorgeous. Um, every time you walked into the room, the curtains like automatically opened.
Wow.
It was the gym was amazing. It was like brown leather on all the equipment. Sauna, steam room, pool. The buffet was amazing, dude. It was really cool. I was like, man, Shanghai is the spot. So we went and checked out some different stuff. We went to the little dupe markets. I got a nice little 747-8 model to use for our for some of our Dial-A-Pilot video stuff. That way, it's not representing any single airline. It's the Air Force One model of the next Air
Hmm,
Force One. So it's kind of cool. I think
that
you'll
is
like it.
cool. Yeah, I got one right up there. Can't see it, but
So
not Air Force One, but I got a Dash 8 model sitting on the old, what do you call these things that you put books on? Bookshelf. There we go.
that'd be a
Sitting up
bookshelf.
on the bookshelf.
There you go. Yeah, you had most of the word. Just needed a couple more
Yeah,
letters.
exactly.
Um, that's awesome. Yeah, man, it's kind of funny. The models, like we got back to the airplane and the flight attendants saw two of us both got models, and they're like, "Oh, you got the models from the dupe markets, huh?" And we're like, "Yeah." She's like, "Every time you guys come here, you do that." I'm like, "Yeah." When you're an aviation nerd, man, you just can't get away from it. Or at least I can't.
That's very true. Well, that's sweet, man. I wish I could have overnighted in Shanghai. I'll go back, I'm sure, eventually. But yeah, we would just fly in and leave right away. But I did go to a new country, Brazil. Hadn't been to Brazil. We flew. Uh, I just sat in the back from here to Atlanta, and then we flew Atlanta down to Gig, which is the airport code for Rio. And then we had like 24 hours. It was just downpouring for basically the entire time. But I got to go up and see
Oh,
Christ the Redeemer. Um, we got little statues of Christ the Redeemer. I'm looking at a couple over there. But it's one of the wonders of the world, which I didn't really realize. It's one of the seven wonders, the new wonders of the world. So that was pretty cool to see. And then Captain let me take the flight back to New York because it was my last leg as a FO, hopefully. So got to do that landing. I was a little worried though because the weather was really low. So for those watching, when I say low, it was right at 200.5 miles. And for those av geeks out there, or for those of you that don't know, 200.5 is usually our lowest Cat 1 minimums, which a Cat 1, we can talk about instrument landing stuff, but Essentially, we use an instrument landing system that has a glide slope, a 3-degree glide slope that brings us down to the runway, and then a localizer that helps us track uh, to the runway as well while we're on the glide slope. The lowest that we can usually do with us doing the landing is 200 and a half or 1800 RVR, which is just like the distance out you can see. So 1800 feet. So, anyways, it was right at 200 and a half. So the entire time I'm sweating it like, oh, we're going to have to do a Cat 2, Cat 3, which, again, for those listening, Cat 2 and Cat 3 are instrument landing minimums that bring us lower, but you need to do an automatic landing, meaning the airplane needs to do the landing and the captain needs to be the pilot flying in that situation. So I was sweating it out the whole way, like, please just stay at 200 and a half. And it was there for like 3 hours. And finally, the captain was like, let's give it a shot at 200 and a half. We did. And the weather was legal, and we went in, and it was like a no joke Cat 1. So we got right to minimums, and at minimums you're looking for a few things, one of which is the instrument landing system, the rabbit as we call it. And the rabbit is just sequence flashing lights leading towards the runway, and once you get those in sight, you can go to 100 feet above touchdown zone elevation. And at that point, if you don't have the red sidewall bars, which is part of the instrument landing light system, uh, or the PAPI or the runway or any of those things at 100 feet above touchdown zone, you have to go missed. So at minimums, we got the rabbit or the sequence flashers, and then got the red cyber bars and landed it. And it was actually, I mean, I don't like to toot my own horn here, but it was a really good final landing. So yeah, hopefully that was the last landing as a first officer.
I had to bring the runway cleaning services out to come get all the grease off the runway after what you did to it.
Yeah, something like that.
That's awesome. Well, you know what that was more than anything for me was a flashback to interviewing with you in our SkyWest days. Joey and I used to conduct the interviews to hire pilots at SkyWest, and that was one of the big questions. FAR 91-175. What do you need to continue below minimums on an approach? And so, Joey, I see you still got it in there, man. I can envision you coming down on your last landing, just reciting it over and over in your head.
I did bring it up
Chanting it to the
during the
captain,
briefing.
maybe.
Yeah, I actually did bring it up during the
You said,
briefing
"Hey, I know
because no, because I knew if we got down to 200, I wanted to make sure we were all on the same page as far as what we could do to continue down to 100 feet above touchdown zone. Um, and so, literally, like clockwork, right at 200, right at minimums, we could see the sequence flashing lights, like I said, and then we could go down to 100 feet. And then we saw the red cider bars and the PAPI, and like the touchdown zone was also in sight right there. So it was just a really, I mean, how often do we shoot Cat 1 minimums or Cat 1 approaches down to minimums? I mean, it's very rare. So it was pretty cool to do on the last leg.
it is rare." Yeah, the last one I did down to all the way down to minimums was Boston after a red eye. So it was like 5 in the morning. And so, the sun's like just starting to come up and we're landing to
Mm,
the east. So the sun is in our eyes, but it's super foggy. And we shot it all the way down to minimums, and it was my leg. And the weather was decreasing as we were coming down the approach. So it was
mm.
calling for like 600 feet overcast and like 3/4 of a mile. So I was hand flying. And as we were coming down, they're like calling out the RVRs. And I'm like, man, it's getting kind of low. So that was the last time I had done one of those. It was all the way down to minimums. But yeah, no, you're right, dude. We don't do those really all that often in the real world. We do them all the time in the simulator, as
Mm-hmm.
everybody that's listening to this podcast knows. We do everything the hardest possible way in the simulator, so that way everything you run into is easy in comparison, which is kind of funny because at my dad growing up, he would do that same thing. He's like, just do it the hard way first, so everything's easier from then on. So I kind of get down with that in the sim, which is kind of fun. But dude, I got one more funny story for you coming back from Shanghai. So we took off at 11 p.m. and China time, and so we're coming back. The other IRO and I go and take our rest. We sleep for like 4.5, 5 hours. We get up, come up front, and so now we're over the Alaska Aleutian Islands,
Mm,
and sunny. It's bright. Now it's like, I'm just guessing on what the local time was, but it was probably like 10, 11 a.m. local time over Alaska. So we're over like Cold Bay, and It's gorgeous. There's no clouds. There's like you can see all the volcanoes. There's see all the snow on all the mountains. The water was like crystal clear and just calm. Like it was stunningly beautiful. And the other pilot that was up there with me, he's been flying this airplane for years, and he's like, "Dude, I have never seen it like this. Like this is amazing." And he goes, "Should we make an announcement about it?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, we could make an announcement about it." It's been like perfectly smooth all day. So I grabbed the PA and I'm say, "Oh, actually, I left out a crucial part of the story. There was one of the volcanoes was actually blowing off steam, like a significant amount of it. So I had never actively seen a volcano doing that. And so we're looking at it, and we're like, holy cow, this is so cool, stunning, all of the above. And so he's like, should we make an announcement? And he's the pilot flying at the time. I'm the pilot monitoring. So therefore, making announcements is my responsibility. So I pick it up. Folks from the flight deck, it's Kyle once again. We have this really cool view coming up on the right side. We normally wouldn't make an announcement about this, but this is stunning. We haven't seen this in years and years of doing this job, so we wanted to point it out, the right side of the airplane, blah, blah, blah. I go through my thing. When I tell you that did not go over well from our amazing flight attendants in the back, they were so mad that I woke everybody up because I just didn't even think about it. Like for us, it was, bright morning, everything's good to go. It's the middle of the day. And they're like, dude, it's the middle of the night for everybody else. And you just woke everybody up. And now they're up and, rummaging, and all the cabin window shades are open. And I was like, oh, man, tried to do the right thing. And didn't think about what time it was. So that was kind of a funny one. So they called me PA boy for the rest of the flight. But whoopsie daisies. It was a cool view. I think the passengers liked it. We actually got a couple phone calls from the back, and they're like, what was the volcano name? We're like, we don't know. So not the passengers calling us. The passengers were asking the flight attendants who were calling us. So that was kind of a funny story, I guess. Whoops. Don't wake everybody up in the middle of the night, I guess, is what I learned on that one.
Yeah, I've been there. Not with a PA, but so when we call back to the flight attendants, you can either use your headset, or there's like usually a phone between the two pilots that you can pick up. And on it says there's like a forward button, a mid button, and an aft button on the airplane that I flew. And if you do the forward or the aft, it calls the forward galley or the aft galley. But if you accidentally hit the mid button goes to the flight attendant crew rest facility, and it's like a loud ding, as you guys have heard. So I picked it up and just in haste hit the mid button in the middle of the flight. So now the flight attendants are trying to rest, and I accidentally wake them up, and I got a pretty big earful on that one. Won't make that mistake again. That was pretty early on. It was just I was going quick to try to call the forward. I forget what it was about, but so yeah, I've been there with that as well. But yeah, you're both you
Yeah.
and who you were flying with at that time are so right. Like I flew over that area a lot, obviously with the cargo, and it's almost always like cloudy and overcast. You rarely get to see it, but I got to see it a couple times, and it's like you said, it's stunning up there. It's so pretty. I think flying over Alaska has got to be one of the most beautiful areas, whether it's mainland Alaska or the Aleutian Islands. Like all that is just absolutely beautiful, and that's one of the benefits of the job, I guess, is to be able to see um, incredible sights like that very few people get to see unless you book a ticket and go over it and get lucky enough for it to be a clear day. But it's absolutely fantastic up there.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with you. It was stunning. It was really cool to see. Yeah, we had a great time up there, and we were laughing about it. We're like, well, whoopsie daisies, but yeah, at least we didn't wake the rest of our crew up that were in the crew rest facilities, because we have the same thing where if you don't dial the right number, it'll make an announcement to everywhere, including the crew
Mm.
rest, and that uh, I mean, it's important for people. You're doing a 12.5 hour flight and you're working for, a significant portion of it. It's important to be able to get your rest. And the last thing you want is somebody waking you up unintentionally with, playing tour guide. So I could understand it for sure. But yeah, whoops, learn that lesson um, moving forward. So I guess it's chalk it up to being the new guy on the fleet. But man, Alaska, what a place. That was actually my I can't remember if we talked about this on the podcast already or not. That was actually my 50th state, though, was Alaska. I went
Oh.
there in over the summer. We went to Fairbanks. Yeah, it was Fairbanks, and that completed my 50. So that was kind of cool. It was nice to check that off the box, or off the list rather.
Yeah, I hit 50 when I I can't remember when I hit 50, but it was New Hampshire. I hadn't been to New Hampshire, and I went there with my regional
Oh,
airline, Manchester. I believe that's the one we went to in New
okay.
Hampshire. So had a
Wow.
had
So
a
you hit it at
lobster roll.
SkyWest. You hit your 50.
Yeah, I had already been to Alaska, and then I had been to Hawaii, but it was like later on in my SkyWest time that I hit it because like I had hit the two that a lot of people don't, like Alaska. I have family that lives in Eagle River. Shout out Eagle River if anybody's watching. And then Hawaii, I had done early on at SkyWest, like non-revving. And then yeah, New Hampshire and some of those, and Maine also hit that at SkyWest. Uh, Flying, and then Vermont hit that at SkyWest. So yeah, a lot of those like nuanced little towns or states up in the Northeast, I hit at SkyWest.
Yeah. I'm pretty impressed with your ability to name states. That was good, dude. You know what's funny is um, it's funny. A lot of the folks that I talk to about this, and these are like my friends, locally where I'm at now here in California. They're like, oh, I got 40 or whatever, but like, when am I ever going to go to North Dakota? And I always laugh. And they're like, wait, is that where you went to school? I'm like, yeah, it is. I spent, I guess, 3 years up there bumming around, and that's where I met you. Kind of. We
Hmm.
didn't become friends at that point, but yeah, so North Dakota is kind of a tough one for people to check off because there's just not a whole lot up there to go see. But if anyone listening is trying to check off North Dakota, go to the Ralph Engelstead Arena in Grand Forks, North Dakota. Check out a hockey game. It's one of the best arenas in all of hockey, including the NHL. And you'll see where Joey and I spent a significant portion of our college careers. And we used to, Joey, did you wait in front of the Ralph for like 12 hours before games to try and get good seats in the student section? Did you ever do that?
It pays to be social, Kyle, because I would have people do it for me, like my friends, like that would already be doing it. I'd like
Oh
weasel
my,
my
you
way,
would.
and so I would show up like I don't know 20 minutes before the game, be like, "Hey guys, what's up?" And then I just
This
hop in with them.
guy. Yeah, hey guy, how's it going, everybody? Yeah, of
Yeah,
course, classic.
but
Wow,
no, I never did. I
Joey just
never did.
cutting right to the front, huh?
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
I
well, good for
paid my
you.
dues.
I don't know why my friends insisted on doing it. Oh, give
Yeah,
me
what
a
do you do?
break. Paid your dues. Yeah,
Yeah.
it pays to be the funny guy on campus, huh?
Oh, I was never. I was not the
Anyways,
class clown.
all right, should we get into Yeah, that's true. Should we get into a little aviation stuff?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, first of all, I think kind of the big news of the day. We're recording this on Friday, the 26th of January, and it's not going to come out for another week or so. But this morning, the first MAX 9 took off again after the FAA and Boeing had approved inspections on that plug type door. I don't know the details of what the inspection actually does. I know they have to take a bunch of rows of seats out. They pull off the sidewalls. They verify, all the hardware's there and secure and all those things. I don't know past that what it is, but those are back flying again. So that was 21 days, 3 weeks of time since that Alaska flight lost its plug door. And they're still investigating that to figure out exactly what happened, whether or not all the hardware was there in the first place or whether it was missing bolts before that door separated. So the first MAX 9s are back in service. And talking about that, essentially what happens is an airworthiness directive gets issued by the FAA. And in this case, it was probably an emergency airworthiness directive that immediately grounded all the MAX 9s in the United States. And then they have to do all of these inspections. We talked about this on the last pod, so I won't get into it too much, but all that to say, what they end up doing is they come up with an inspection process in a way to make sure that, hey, are these things good to go? Is there going to be any issues moving forward? And so once those are all complete, they were able to start returning MAX 9s to service. So I know a lot of the airlines that operate them had already done all of the inspections, and then we're kind of waiting for the FAA to say, hey, yep, those inspections are sufficient and we'll be good to go, due to, the engineering on the airplane. So that's good. And then I also read, Joey, that they are looking at a few serial numbers of the 900ER, which is the next gen, uh, which is kind of a misleading name, actually. The next gen 737 is the one prior to the MAX. So it's just the way that they name them. So because a few 900 ERs, the next gens, were manufactured while MAX 9s were also being manufactured, they said, hey, let's take a look at those ones too. Um, so if you've seen some confusing things out there about that, that's the idea behind it. The 737 next gen was built for a long time, and then the Max 9 or the Max series came out, and they had a few 900 ERs that were finishing up production before they fully retooled and switched over to the Maxes. So that's kind of why that crossover. Anything to add on that news front, Joey?
No, I mean you're the 737 guy. I obviously haven't flown it, and honestly probably won't now, just because of the way I'm going Airbus, and I'm planning to stay on that for a while. So, but I do have friends that are on it, and I get asked a lot, like, do you trust the 737 and all these things? And personally, this is just a Joey personally thing. I think it's very safe. I mean, especially with how much has been looked at over the last 4 years. And if the FAA signs off on something, with their track record, I'm willing to trust the FAA's guidance saying that everything is fine. So I would fly on it. I'd let my fiance fly on it. I have no concerns, and I know from my friends that fly it, they love the Max. I mean, because for us up front, it's like all a bunch of new technology. So again, that's just kind of my personal side of things. But yeah, other than that, nothing to add. I don't know any of the specifics or specifications or what they did to check it or anything like that. But generally, if the FAA
Gotcha.
signs off on it, with the FAA being how strict they are, I would say it's safe to fly on.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. As we have said so many times before, staying away from speculation and anything opinion based is kind of our goal. So we always yield to uh really the experts in the industry, and the people that understand the engineering and have the drawings and the blueprints, and the people that are building the airplanes and inspecting the airplanes, and trust that they do a good job of managing those things and ensuring that the flying and traveling public is safe. Um, because safety just absolutely needs to be the top priority at all times. I know there's been some stuff over in recent years that has come out about Boeing, and a lot of people will ask me about uh, those things and Netflix documentaries and all of that. And I try to stay away from it because I just don't know. And so many of these things can be sensationalized. So um, I spent years flying the Max. I had a great time on it. It flew really well. Um, and I'm now flying another Boeing product. It's a fantastic airplane. I love flying it. It flies extremely well. It's got unbelievable levels of system redundancies. Joey, you're coming off of a Boeing product going to the Airbus, because your airline flies a lot of Airbus products. Mine flies less. We're mostly Boeing. I think 81% of our fleet is actually Boeing, if memory
Hmm.
serves. So yeah, it's. I guess I'll kind of leave it at that. But that's kind of my opinion without inserting an opinion, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, sweet.
Um, moving on, I was out flying a little general aviation airplane today, that little Bonanza I made a couple videos with, the little white and blue one. And one of the questions that I get a lot on our social media is, actually, it's not even one specific question, but there's a lot of questions, and they all kind of come in this general, what's a good way to put it, this general anxiety towards flying and coming up with these hypothetical situations that could theoretically happen. And so people always say, well, what if the engine fails right at the end of the runway? And it's like, well, that would be a bad day for me. And I don't think I'd be podcasting for a little while. So it's kind of one of those things that it's, what we do is we manage risk to the lowest acceptable level. And then we analyze, if we can take that risk. And I kind of just phrased that a little bit weird. So we are essentially in the business of looking at risk, evaluating risk, deciding whether or not it's an acceptable level of risk to take on that given day with that given airplane and that given crew and that given mission. And if it is, then we go fly. Um, but of course, especially in these little small general aviation airplanes, there are those times where it's like it could just be, an unfortunate situation that happens just the exact wrong time. I like to point out that although you could come up with hypothetical scenarios that are like, okay, yeah, theoretically that's possible. The stars would have to align in the worst possible way. I like to point out that in an airline environment, the people that are building the airplanes, they have gone through and pretty much gone through every single one of those hypothetical scenarios and
Hmm.
gone, okay, what could go wrong right here? And is it going to result in, something catastrophic? And they get that risk to almost zero. And so when we talk about, in a single engine airplane losing the engine at the end of the runway, that's a bad day for Kyle if I'm flying it. Now, when we talk about flying in an airliner and you lose an engine at the end of the runway, that's fine. They have engineered those airplanes to climb out, get away from the terrain. We know exactly what to do. We have our call outs. We train this all the time. We've talked about this a million times, so we won't talk about it again. I'm sure you've seen the videos about it. But it's a whole different kind of beast is the airline flying versus the general aviation flying. And with that, you start your aviation career flying general aviation, the small airplanes, and then you work your way up to the big ones. Well, I've learned so much, obviously, through the course of doing this job that nowadays, when I go fly those small airplanes, I manage it like I manage the airliner, doing the flows and back it up with a checklist, doing everything really slow, doing it twice, making sure, hey, we're not doing anything to rush. Although this is a great time saving tool if we're traveling, that's not the reason we're using it. We're using it because it's fun for us. We love it. It is a fantastic tool, but slowing everything down, making sure that we're doing things the right way in this business is just so important. And so to take those lessons from the airline world and bring them over to the general aviation world, I would say has made me a significantly better and more safe pilot, flying the little things and just managing those levels of risk down to acceptable levels. So, uh, yeah, I know that got a little long winded, Joey. What do you got on that?
No, that's great. I mean, that's what this podcast is for, to just kind of share our thoughts on this stuff. But no, I reiterate what you've said. I've only flown GA a handful of times since I, started flying at the airlines, and you're 100% correct in that the airlines, and not only the manufacturers of the aircraft, if you have engine failures, and for example, as you kind of talked about, but just the way that policies and procedures are created. And I think we kind of talked to this like on a couple of the first episodes. Whereas aviation used to be that, there's that saying that aviation procedures, laws, etc., are written in blood. There's truth to that, because it used to be, and this is way back, there'd be something that would happen, an incident, an accident, whatever, and then they would change policy and procedures in reaction to said incident or accident. But now, in the way that it works with the airlines, is that we have so many safety management things in the aircraft, both with what the aircraft is monitoring and then what we're monitoring and we can report, and then what the outside, as far as air traffic control, what they can report, so that we can start to see trends, whether they're good trends or bad trends, and we can change policy and procedures before anything bad happens. And I think that's been a huge reason as to why we have had the um, safety you know record that we have had over the last 20 plus years, is because of the way that we kind of recaged our thought process when it comes to safety, specifically in the airlines. And I know GA has similar type reporting, but it's not quite as advanced as the airliners are. I mean, literally every switch, button, gauge, speed, input into the controls, all of that is recorded. And after the flight is done, and some airlines, while it's the flight is happening, or excuse me, some aircraft, while the flight is happening, all gets downloaded to a server, and the safety gurus at all the different airlines can compile that data and see trends, like I said, to try to help make policies and procedures ahead of time, being proactive versus reactive, has really changed the game when it comes to airlines, excuse me. And then, like you said, you kind of take that mindset, that mentality of the professionalism that we have in the flight deck to the GA. And obviously, if that went across the board to GA, I think the safety of GA would also increase just as much as it does in the airline environment. But we're paid to be professionals. We're paid to do this for our jobs. And it makes me happy that it's so safe. I always tell people this too, and I don't remember if I said this on the last pod, but um, I'm not a daredevil. I'm not like a BMX pro bike rider or anything. I do ski, but I don't do anything crazy. So, like, where I'm going with that is I wouldn't do this job or sign up to go to work every day if I didn't think it was incredibly safe. If it was as safe as, a lot of other jobs. Now, obviously, there's inherent risk involved with what we do, and we've said that before too. But I'm not any kind of crazy. I'm a very cautious person. So I wouldn't do this job if I didn't think it was 100% safe to put myself on that flight every single day, or my fiance on that flight, or my future children on that flight, or my mom, my brother, etc., and so forth. So I always like to share that on the phone calls. Like, pilots aren't, superheroes or anything like that. We're just normal people, and we wouldn't be doing this most likely if we didn't think it was as safe as it is. And because we get to see a lot of those safeguards. So, anyways, a little bit of a tangent as well, but I always like to bring that up that the flight attendants and us, we're not, we're not all on the Red Bull teams or whatever where they do all those crazy feats. We do it because we know how safe it is, and we do it because we love it, but also, again, mainly because we know we're gonna get a walk home at the end of the day.
Right, right. No, absolutely. And uh, well said as always. But it brought something else up for me too. And when I talk about managing risk and lowering it to the lowest acceptable level, what I really mean here is like we're talking in the grand scheme of things. And what you'll hear a lot, especially when you're a nervous traveler and you're looking up how to, fix it and all those things. And you probably have heard or maybe have noticed that Joey and I stay away from things like, oh, well, it's safer or you're more in danger of dying on your drive to the airport. And it's like, yeah, but that may be true statistically, but that doesn't help. Like uh, that's not a reassuring statement. It's like, oh, okay, I got to worry about that too. So, what we really mean in this is there's no possible way to limit every single risk. Laying on the couch all day, well, you're increasing your risk for heart disease. Going out in the sun and going to the beach, well, increasing your risk for skin cancer. Driving to the park, well, increasing your risk to get in a car accident. All those things come together. Eating food, you're increasing your risk to choke. Like everything comes together to create some risk. Everything in life has that. And so when we look at it, Joey and I go, hey, we're taking a 1 million-pound airplane into the sky today and we're going to take it to China. Uh, have we managed the risk to the lowest possible level? And the answer, because of all of the engineering and the safety teams that go into this and the weather teams and our dispatchers looking over our shoulder and our flight attendants managing the cabin, every single person and every single service that has touched that airplane and built it into what it is has really made it so that when Joey and I become that, I don't know if last line of defense is the right term, but well, I'll just use that term. When we get there and we're the last line of defense to say, is everything good to go? The answer is 99.9999% of the time, yes. Um, I personally, in my airline career, have never turned an airplane down and have never turned a flight down that wasn't canceled for any reason that was due to the pilots canceling it because everybody else has done their job and gotten it so that we got to the airplane and it was good to go. And the weather was good enough for us and all those things. I mean, it's amazing how often we show up to the airplane and things are just, taken care of because the system works is what I'm getting at. It's not like we're kings and queens and all those things and, nobody needs us to lift a finger. That's not the case at all. The system just works insanely well. And every gatekeeper it's like listening to NASA on a go for launch. Rocketry, good to go. Yeah. Weather, good to go. Yeah. You do that whole thing, and it's a little bit more of a silent count in the aviation business, but it just works. I don't. Joey, do you feel the same way about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very well. refined machine. Obviously, I think every airline, the one thing that airlines agree on, and this is for those that are in the industry, airlines don't agree on a lot of things, but the one thing that we do agree on is safety, because safety is not only good for business, but your employees are going to walk home at the end of the day if you're a very safe airline. Every airline's guiding principle starts with safety, and it's not just one of those like uh, kumbaya things. It starts with safety because that's what every airline believes is first and foremost the most important part of this entire industry. So, where I go with that is, yeah, it's an incredibly well oiled machine, if you will, but there's always room for improvement. As we've seen, there are incidents that happen. And like we said on the last podcast, incidents happen, but at the end of the day, a lot of the policies and procedures shine through, and that's why, especially in the case of the Japan thing, so many people got out of there with their lives. And so again, we're always we're always aiming for something that we're never going to achieve, which would be a completely perfectly safe airline environment. But we're always striving to get there. And I think that is across the board. Like you said, all the different departments of airlines, all the different airlines working together to try to hit that moving target. But we're going to continue to do that, and we're going to continue to fight for safety. And it will always be in our minds. Until the day that we retire, and even after, because we're going to continue to non-rev and fly around on the airline. So, yeah, it's a good thought experiment to go through this stuff, because we don't really get to think about it on a day to day. We just show up and we do our job and we manage that risk. But it is kind of cool to zoom out and talk about safety, and it's something that's obviously very close to both of our hearts.
Right, absolutely. And just to kind of elaborate on one thing you said there, Joey, it was something along the lines of, we will always shoot for a perfectly safe airline environment, but may not get there. And just to make sure that we're not sending our fantastic listeners' minds wandering on that. What we really mean is, things like turbulence injuries and things like running a baggage cart into the airplane, like those sort of things are safety related. And when you have hundreds of thousands of employees, and you're flying airplanes all around the world, of course you're going to encounter turbulence. You're going to have flight attendant injuries, probably some passenger injuries at some point with the turbulence stuff. But that's why we always talk about, hey, what can you do as a passenger to lower your risk, your personal risk, as much as possible? And the answer is just respecting that seatbelt sign and doing what you can, and making sure that you're uh, taking care of kind of your role to play, because everybody plays a role, from pilots, passengers, flight attendants, gate agents, rampers. Everybody has a role, maintainers. Um, and so as long as we can all do that, we can get as close to being perfectly safe as possible. Um, but as with all things in life, nothing's ever perfect. So that's why we continue to do this, and that's why there's this massive industry that is dedicated to it. So uh, just again, one of those things we reiterate on all the time. I'm just so proud to be a part of this industry, and um, working with the folks that we do, because they are dedicated, consummate professionals, and they make it so that our job is as safe as it is and as enjoyable as it is. I love going to work. Going to Shanghai, that was awesome. I had a great crew. We had so much fun. I hit the sauna. It was great. I love saunas. So,
Saunas are
yeah,
sweet.
there you go. They are sweet. Really good for you too, mental health
Hmm.
wise. Maybe we'll. Actually, let's talk about this, Joey. I sent out a survey to our Instagram following, and I said, "Hey, what do you guys want? We're trying to build this thing, and I'm trying to make it really cool." And as somebody aptly pointed out in the survey, they said, "Hey, you're kind of wearing 12 hats. Social media." Uh, I hesitate to use the term influencer, but social media poster person, um, podcast host, running a business, managing our fantastic pilot group that's taking these calls, trying to build out the website, and just, I mean, I have so many fantastic people that help out, Joey, yourself included. Um, but somebody just said, "Hey, what is it going to be? What do you want it to be? How can you simplify?" And so, um, during the survey process, we put it out there and we said, hey, what do you guys want? And so we got 121 responses, and we just posted it once. Side note here, our group of folks is so engaged and we get so many responses to things when we post them online. I'm just really grateful. It makes it really fun to do. Like I really personally enjoy doing that in the Q&As and all that stuff. But what it basically came down to is, hey, we want a 7-day, like, kind of get ready course on, I can start doing this 7 days ahead of time. It's the practical tips and tricks. And so we're going to build that. I started working on it last night, actually, when I got home from Shanghai. And so I started doing the outline there. So we're going to build that. That's all going to be within the Dial a Pilot kind of premium community that we have going. And it's also got, it's actually really cool. I'll post some photos of it on our social media. And it's got all these videos about takeoffs, landings, weather related questions, the podcast episodes. Our folks can interact with each other and kind of support each other and celebrate their own flight victories and ask the questions of pilots. And, when something like the Alaska flight incident happens, I'll go make about a 5-minute, 6-minute video about it and just say, hey, here's what happens. Here's, again, no speculation stuff, but here's how something like this, we are trained to deal with it. And so I use the trusty whiteboard behind me here, aircraft models, all those things to really hopefully just give some context behind when you're reading articles. You can go, oh, okay, I know what this means. And I understand why they're talking about this and what the implications are. So we're doing that. And then what I would like to do ultimately on there too is really develop some like live stream, a weekly live stream thing. Because what we're running into, well, I'm not even sure we're running into it necessarily, but I can just understand that to spend an extra $50 every time you get on a flight to do these calls, we have a lot of folks that do it all the time, and it's fantastic. And I'm grateful as can be for them, and grateful to be able to help them out. But if you're in a position where you want to listen to other people's questions or really don't know what to ask us, because we have people say that to us too, I would love to get on these live streams and other folks ask questions and we can talk about, hey, this is where we flew this week. Joey, I would love to have you on these too. And just really kind of develop that relationship, but do it in a way where it's not cost prohibitive for our group of clientele. So I've been hard at work building that stuff, and it's been really fun and enjoyable for me. And I want to build this community to be really cool and something that is not fear mongering. There's no, I mean, dude, you should see some of the comments that we get on our stuff. Of just people calling our group, scaredy cats and dumb, and I'll, save the rest of the terms that they've used and the things that they've called me, which is kind of funny. It was water off a duck's back at this point, but I just want to get it to a point where it's nothing but community support for one another. And doing this 7-day course thing. My wife is she's has a degree in nutrition. She's going to add some stuff on supplements that help kind of ease your anxiety and just really getting you into a position to be successful on the airplane. So yeah, that's what I've been hard at work at, Joey, and it's been pretty fun. I'm really enjoying building this community out. It's kind of this cool platform thing that I'll get you going on too, and we can both contribute as much as you'd like to.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, our fearless leader Kyle here has obviously done a great job building this thing out, and every phone call, people love it. People love to be able to talk to us, and I always lead something that you said there. I always lead off with, "Hey, I don't want you to feel like ashamed. I don't, if that's the right word. I don't want you to feel like I'm judging you or anything because you're afraid of situations that to us as pilots we're not afraid of. I love hearing what makes people nervous, because then it allows me on my flights, my individual flights, to kind of address those things as much as I can, to because I understand that there are people in the back now that feel the way that the people that I talk to on the phone calls feel, and it's been very enlightening. I didn't really understand that people were so anxious about little things that Kyle, you and I wouldn't be anxious about. But I always lead off on the phone calls like, please don't think I'm going to judge you. Please don't think that I'm going to laugh or, any of these things. No matter how silly you think your fear is, I get it. And it's just like with me and snakes or me and spiders or any of these things. I'm afraid of them. But if you go to like a zoologist or whoever deals with these things, they're not going to be afraid of it. It's kind of the same situation. So no, this has been awesome. I love doing it. I personally really like the Q&A pods because I literally get a look at what the questions are and we can answer them directly without you having to take 15 to 30 minutes out of your day. We can just hit it right here on the podcast. You can re-listen to it as many times as you want. So very cool things coming forward with Dial a Pilot, it sounds like, and just happy to be a part of the ride.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Joey, I couldn't have done any of this without you and your support and your dedication to our fantastic group of people who have been so fun to get to know. Both on their social media and through the calls and all those things. It's really been enjoyable. Um, but yeah, one of the other things I was thinking on the live stream stuff that I would love to do is uh have it so that when those Q&As happen and people, come up with a question that maybe we didn't quite answer all the way, they can jump in right then. Hey, can you
Mm.
expand on that a little bit more? So that way it's like, it kind of gets the interactive side of things. And I mean, who knows? Maybe that ends up becoming, podcast episodes too, um, which would probably be pretty advantageous because then it's, you're just listening to the conversations, with everybody. But anyways, yeah, it's been fun. It's been really fun. I'm excited to build this out and really focus on it and, continue to just try and build something that is number one, what our group wants and needs to really feel comfortable and confident on the airplane. And number two is affordable. I, Joey, we got full time jobs and we're very fortunate to be in the position that we are. And um, I just am excited to be able to kind of give this back to the community and I want to make it something that's approachable for everybody and is just filled with value for people. I mean, I think that's kind of the big thing that we really have tried to focus on. So yeah, that's kind
Hmm.
of my thoughts on where we're going over the next my unsolicited thoughts on where we're going over the next couple weeks. But I've been noodling on it a lot and have been grateful for all the people that have, submitted surveys and put their phone numbers on and, hey, call me. I really want to talk about this. I got ideas. Um, so yeah, it's been really cool. I'm grateful to be in the position to kind of steer the ship and have a lot of really fantastic people like yourself, Joey, that have been just instrumental in having the ship kind of moving along and going the right direction. So anyways, anything else we should add before we start closing it out?
No, just schedule for the podcast moving forward is going to be probably every 2 weeks. Obviously, with our schedules, which are very fluid, change a lot. We get added to trips, we get taken off of trips. I'm upgrading to captain, which means I'm going to be on reserve. We're going to try to get these out to you as much as we can. Initially, we were trying to go weekly, but just due to scheduling conflicts and me and Kyle being in almost me in the Midwest, him on the West Coast, it's just going to be easiest if we go bi-weekly or yeah, every 2 weeks or so. And then it also gives you the chance to ask your questions for those watching, and we can kind of compile those and have a more substantial base of questions, and then also have different ideas and topics that we can hit on and do a little bit more research on to make sure that when we're speaking to you, we're giving you the value that you deserve. So moving forward, we're going to try to do it every 2 weeks, and then obviously if things change, we'll let you know. But that's what we're going to try to do. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But other than that, yeah, no, thanks. As always, like, follow, subscribe, and please, please, please engage. It sounds like you guys do. From what I've seen, you guys definitely do. But we want to answer your questions.
Well said. I don't have anything else to add. Thanks everybody. We'll talk to you here in 2 weeks and on social media, of course. Chat with you soon.